Globally, the numbers on malnutrition are concerning. 523 million are projected to still sleep hungry in 2030. Only a third of children 6 to 23 months meet the minimum dietary diversity goal, and only 2/3 of women of reproductive age meet this. The interesting thing is that the foods that could address some of these challenges do exist, and some of these food groups are aquatic foods. So in this episode of the Deep Dive, we are asking the question, can fish fix the global nutrition crisis? So what do we mean when we talk about the global nutrition crisis? To set the scene, Christina Hicks, a professor at Lancaster University who studies food, health, and equity.
We think of the global nutrition crisis, there's sort of three key components. So firstly, there's people not getting enough calories. Secondly, there's people not getting enough of the right nutrients. And then thirdly, it's people getting too much of the wrong nutrients.
So the crisis isn't just about hunger, it's about missing nutrients. Fish can help with this, but what does that mean in practice?
So when we think of fish and nutritional profile, there's a huge diversity within fish. And then we look at other aquatic foods like crustaceans and seaweeds and cephalopods and other marine invertebrates, there's a whole different range of nutrients. But the key thing I think that we're finding in Timor-Leste is that small fish, small pelagic fish in the ocean, they're very nutritious, they're highly abundant, and they're very affordable compared to other fish.
So diverse aquatic foods widen the plate even further. In the Philippines, Dr. Imelda Angeles-Agdeppa knows just how important fish are to children's diets.
Fish play a vital role in addressing actually malnutrition, since fish are rich sources of quality proteins and essential nutrients, such as, of course, vitamin D, omega fatty acid, zinc, iodine, and calcium. These nutrients are actually very lacking or inadequate in the Filipino food intake, especially so during, among our school kids or among our children.
So if fish is so good, why doesn't it reach the people who need it the most? Professor Rashid Sumaila opines that the answer lies in markets.
Many people don't get access to fish, nutritious fish, which is important for health and all that. Is actually, there are several factors. One is the market, essentially. This idea of fish as a commodity, fish as something you make money on, right? And so there's a market for fish, international market for fish, so that those who have the purchasing power actually grab the fish. And so that's one big reason. In one interview I made an example. Namibia hake, right? When they catch it, within 10 hours, it's already somewhere in Europe, in France or in Spain or Portugal. They're shipped away. They get visa right away to go, right? but Africans don't get visa. To get a visa is like, my God, end of the world. So that is the thing. There is a market, global market, that just sucks up the fish from those who need it to those who can't pay for it.
You know, it's really important that we don't see fish just as a commodity, but we see it as a source of nutrition, a source of culture, a source of livelihoods, a source of social cohesion. I think a lot of fisheries management and fisheries policy has viewed fish as a resource. So it's been about how can we maximize the amount of fish that we're pulling out of the water whilst leaving enough in the water that it can replenish itself, or as a economic resource. So how can we get the most money out of a fishery through extracting rent? And so because that's been the way fisheries policy and management has played out in the kind of more, particularly in the global north, but in sort of Western-based science, but that's influenced the globe. We tend to see fish as a source of income or in terms of total revenues. And so that's what we value. We value how much fish can you catch, and we value how expensive is that fish. But that then tends to overlook the diversity of fish that we have in the water, the importance of that diversity for ecosystems, the importance of that diversity for people's diets. It means we overlook the importance of fishing as a way of life, as a culture, the importance of sustaining many people in the fishery, rather than minimizing the labor that's going into the fishing and maximizing the rent that's being extracted from it.
So fish flows to the highest bidders. Communities lose both their fish and their money. Christina points to another layer where global demand meets weak infrastructure.
Trade can create access, but trade can also remove access. And that's even to people that are living within coastal zones. I guess the other aspect about fish is it's a perishable commodity. So unless there's a way to store it in a way that it's not going to degrade, it's hard. And there are many ways, tinning and drying, and it's very common around the world. But unless there are ways and the infrastructure essentially to be able to do that, then it's difficult for fish to reach more remote regions.
The distribution and the safe distribution of fish and other aquatic foods, that's the main barrier to be able, for people to access, even disregarding, affordability.
Lack of abundance is one of the contributors of inadequate fish intake here in the Philippines. It's just because also if there is less supply, it's very expensive, and transportation facilities are not really that good, like for example post-harvest cold chains and so on.
But access isn't just about roads and storage. It's about power, it's about who gets in, and it's about who the policies are written for, says Tendai Gunda of the Sun Movement.
One of the things that keeps coming up quite strongly is, of course, we do have the policies, we do have the strategies, but we also need in-country legislative frameworks that govern and support or create an enabling environment for aquatic food production. For example, we need clear legislative frameworks and enabling systems that allow for the safe production, for safety, true safety throughout the entire aquatic food production, food system, which means, supporting storage, processing, and transportation networks, investing in cold chain management, and having financing mechanisms that actually support that. Even develop women-sensitive or gender-sensitive financing mechanisms that allow for women fish processors and traders to actually engage in this food system. More often than not, we're coming up with gender-blind policies that fail to address the needs of women, children, and girls. So I think sometimes one of those issues, that's something that needs to be looked into and improved upon. And for those small enterprises that actually want to venture into fish trading and fish or aquatic food production, one of the issues that also came out quite strongly in the UN Food System Summit is the issue of access to finance and credit lines for this. And what I think needs to be done is to try and look at the finance and credit products that are out there and work with the providers to reframe or to review those product lines so that they can be accessible to the micro and small fish trading enterprises.
So when fish reach the plates of those who actually need it, what difference does this really make? Imelda points to one very practical reason: small fish matter.
Small fish species often eaten whole are particularly nutrient dense because we can eat all the bones and so on. So that's actually very rich in calcium. However, these are very poorly accessible, especially those that are actually not in the coastal area. And moreover, these foods have a lower environmental footprint. That's why we like to promote. But then, making them more sustainable for long term, it's very difficult. Now, we can integrate this in our school-based supplementary feeding program if we have actually production level adequacy. And of course, transportation, distribution are really in place.
And when fish is included or built into school meals, the impact multiplies.
Sweden's got this incredible school feeding program where school meals are free up until the age of 16, and children have to have at least 2 portions of fish in their diet. And those there's been quite a lot of research done into the effectiveness of those school feeding programs, and the evidence is that inclusion of fish in those school feeding programs has led to better educational outcomes, particularly for children from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So that's like really strong evidence that if we're able to get fish into children's diets, it leads to higher educational attainments, and it reduces the inequities. That's in a very wealthy country that has a lot of resources, and there may be questions around some of that fish is farmed and what implications that has. But as a kind of principle, school feeding programs supporting healthy diets and healthy outcomes is really important.
We've been supplying through an innovative, delivery system, fresh fish to schools that normally would not access in municipalities that are landlocked, and having the nutritious, fresh food available in those communities is very, it has a substantial impact into people's diets, when affordable.
If we incorporate aquatic foods into school meals programs, then I think we start killing several birds with one stone, and achieving good nutrition status in school children, whilst also creating a market and expanding the economy.
So different settings, different solution, but the principle is the same. Adapting the form and policy support gets it done. But Rashid reminds us of the bigger picture.
Fish is too important to be left to the market, And there's economic theory to back this up. I mean, we know that we talk about missing markets. We talk about markets just don't work when you have all these externalities, right? So we can actually draw on economic theory to support the need to move most of our fish, if not all, and make them according to need rather than according to purchasing power. So that is at that level. But for this to happen, citizens, NGOs, institutions, international, intergovernmental, have to actually push for it, because nothing really happens if we don't push for it, to get that to the level of policy.
Evidence is one thing. The challenge remains that we have to move from evidence to practice. Governments have to pick up solutions, they have to allocate budgets, and they have to scale this. Many Anglophone African countries include aquatic foods and indeed fish in their national nutrition strategies. But as Tendai points out, the challenge is moving from paper to practice.
About 96% of the countries in Anglophone Africa actually have aquatic foods as a critical element in their national nutrition strategies. So it is being taken seriously from a policy perspective. And I think that's very important. And I'll also say that the Africa Union Commission is also working really hard to elevate blue economy as one of the critical agenda items for the continent. So it means we do have the regional framework and we have country frameworks really speaking to each other in that regard, which means it's being taken seriously. But the challenge, of course, is, linking what's in policy and strategy with what actually gets accomplished on the ground. What has happened so far is a lot of pilots and I think very good proof of concepts that have not been funded for scale up, which is a big challenge and which is one of the big things that I think need to come in to really bridge that gap between policy and implementation.
We have a lot of interventions, but it is implemented on a piecemeal basis. So you cannot see the whole effect or a holistic view that we are really doing what we need to do, no? One agency doing somewhat else, another agency doing another thing. So there's no connect. There is no cohesiveness of policies across agencies of the government and also the international development agencies. So meaning to say, I think development agencies also must actually put an end-to-end approach to solving the malnutrition crisis.
But policy is only as strong as the system that supports it.
So there's such mismatch between what is really important and useful, like fish, which is food, which is nutrition, which is our health, and we value it so poorly compared to other things,
It is definitely, very strong argument from a just food system perspective that the nutrients that are being, produced in the seas or the waters or the land of the people, they should also, be prioritized in a context of scarcity for those people over selling them. And so that's a political decision by states that they can prioritize selling for revenue and income and exporting those, fish or different aquatic foods, or prioritizing the needs of the local populations in terms of what are the nutrition and food security goals that they have.
So policies can open doors, but these doors do not remain open unless there's demand. This is where behavior, culture, and even marketing come in. Tendai has seen this firsthand in her work.
I think what is important is for us to do the social behavior change communication to really create a high demand for the aquatic foods so that at least the private sector sees a market for that. But from the private sector, this is what they've really said to me quite strongly, put across quite strongly, they need the market first.
In other words, producers are ready to meet demand. But for us to ensure demand, the way we talk about fish has to shift, and therefore communication has to be part of the science.
The way I approach this is first to get the information out, do the research, keep piling the evidence, right? So that's one. And then awareness. Sometimes I talk to people and they say, oh my God, we never thought of this that way. And that gets them thinking, right? And so the more we can do that, you know how life is. We're entrenched in some behavior. And to change it is not easy. But actually, if you look back in history, we've changed a lot of behaviors, things that we thought were normal. And then some crazy scientist comes out with the finding. First, they go after you. Oh, gosh, this is all BS. And then you keep piling until before you know it's out there. So that is the way that's what gives me hope, actually. I keep pushing because, and I think scientists and thinkers and people who really look at society, we have more influence than we think. And I say this to scientists, we feel, but actually, I just keep talking. You'll be surprised who will finally listen to you. So, yeah.
So demand isn't just about price and supply. It's about messaging, it's about marketing, it's about the stories we tell about what is good to eat. So it begs the question, If policy, access, and demand are all this complex, can fish really fix the global nutrition crisis?
Since fish provides a mix of high-quality protein and essential nutrients, it plays a critical role, actually, in improving nutrition, particularly among children and also our vulnerable groups like the pregnant women. No, however, the nutrition complex the nutrition crisis is very complex, right? So, and it is actually driven by many factors, including poverty, food access, education, and the health system itself. So, addressing the global nutrition crisis, of course, requires a multifaceted approach, and that includes all stakeholders. But it is not limited to promoting fish consumption, but alongside other interventions like what you have said, promoting fish, food fortification, improving agricultural diversity, strengthening and solving the crisis means combining many strategies in a sustainable, culturally sensitive way. Now, emphasis, however, should be given, of course, to nutrient-dense foods like fish. In order, of course, to do this, again, it's a high political will to actually have a holistic approach to actually address the whole food system scenario.
Yes, it can, but I think it's much more complex than just fish. So fish has a really important role to play in addressing the nutrition crisis, but we need to make sure that policies don't have perverse outcomes, and that we also address the broader drivers of the nutrition crisis.
Marine fish that we catch, roughly we take about 120 million tons of fish at the moment, which is not optimal, right? Because we have overfish. If we can work to rebuild and manage it well, we might get some more. So 120 million tons of fish, if you convert that to mature cows, and if you assume that one mature cow is a ton, which is a reasonable assumption, then we are getting about 120 million mature cows out of the ocean. Mature fish cows, I call them, each year. That is more than double all the cows that are slaughtered the world over. So that is a lot of fish if we can direct it to our most vulnerable and needy population.
Even though there's this global effort to identify the perfect diet, diets are contextual, culturally informed, and that needs to be the way. I think that they need to be crafted and supported, but supporting local food systems that provide fish to the populations that that need them instead of moving them around, perhaps is something that governments slowly by slowly through more evidence and analysis could be thinking of. It's like, how do we look at the nutrient flows, not just at the commodity flows.
So fish alone will not address the global nutrition crisis. But when it is valued for its role beyond trade, it can change lives. In a world where millions of children and women of reproductive age lack the nutrients required for a healthy life, we have a simple, immediate tool at hand. So the real question is not whether fish can fix the global nutrition crisis. The question is, will we give this sector the support it requires for fisheries to contribute to addressing global nutrition challenges?